Hi, I'm Pat Murphy-Racy, Sony Artisan of Imagery. I'm here to talk to you about the AX series of Sony video cameras. These are camcorders. These cameras, I've been using the different versions of these as they've evolved over the last 7 years, and they're really handy. Sometimes it's just inconvenient to use even a mirrorless body to do long-form recording. The zooms on these are super convenient, and some of the times the audio aspect is easier too. But what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about the AX33, then I'm going to talk about the AX43, which I don't have. I'm sorry, I couldn't get one. And then I'm going to talk about the AX53, and finally I'm going to talk about the AX700. I'm also going to mention the AX100, which is not here either, but the AX700 is a much better camera. So first of all, the big deal with the AX series, at least the smaller ones, there's two things here I should point out. These cameras, these three cameras, the AX33, the 43, and the 53, all have a very small sensor. They have a little tiny sensor. This AX700 and the X100 has a 1-inch sensor. So you can see the form, the size of the camera is radically different, right? So the larger the sensor, the better the quality of the video you can produce, and the better they are in low light. So this is a big consideration. Now the disadvantage of the larger sensor is your zoom is not as powerful. So the ability to get really telephoto out of the camera is greatly lessened because you're having to cover, the optics have to cover a larger sensor. So these smaller sensor cameras have a nice wide perspective lens, but they also have the ability to zoom out to incredible, 400 or 500 millimeter. So it's really neat to have that. The big advantage, though, of these lower end AX series cameras is that they have a built-in gimbal. So now what does that mean? When you turn the camera on, you'll see that the lens in here is actually going to kind of counter my movements. So if you're shooting video and you're hand holding and you cough, the camera is actually going to attempt to try to correct that cough using its built-in 3-axis gimbal. So these are incredibly useful cameras for doing POV work, which stands for point of view. I used to cover a bicycle race every year, and I did like 4 or 5 years in a row, and I would have to be on the back of a motorcycle shooting the bicyclists as they're racing. And I always use this camera. It's such a perfect camera for that purpose. I could put it on a monopod, I could extend it out a little bit so it was like in their face without the motorcycle being in front of them. And I could like ride along, and it was just an amazing thing. So not having to carry around a gimbal, which requires another batteries, and it's real cumbersome and big and all that stuff, is a huge advantage of the AX33, the 43, and the 53. Now, the AX33 is no longer made, so it's really not an option unless you can find one used or new old stock someplace. But here's the thing, though. Even though the same sensor is in the 33 and the 43 and the 53, every time Sony makes a new camera, they are able to squeeze more out of that sensor than they did before. And I would recommend strongly that you not get a 33. You should not look for a used one or anything like that. You should go for the 43. Now, there's a difference between the 43 and the 33 that I need to talk about, and one of those things is that the AX33 has an EVF viewfinder. So that is to say, you can look into the viewfinder like this and shoot like this, which is handy if you're at a beach. Sometimes if it's a really bright ambient light, you can't really see what's happening on the screen. And so then an eye-level viewfinder is really useful. So again, I can just pull this out, pop it up. It's going to turn the camera on, and now I can shoot like this, looking through the viewfinder, and I can see everything I need to see. So this is not an option on the AX43 because the AX43 does not have an eye-level viewfinder. But I would tell you that most people that are shooting video are not going to need an eye-level view. They're just not going to use an EVF. So I would really recommend mostly the AX43 and the AX700 in the lineup currently. I can't say enough good things about the built-in gimbal. It is a huge game changer, and it settles down your video. A lot of people think they're steady, and you think you're doing a good job, and then when you get home after being a week in Europe or something like that, you realize how shaky you were and how you're herky-jerky and like your breathing is in there and all that stuff. So having the built-in gimbal is huge. It's really, really a big deal. And the ability that these cameras have to shoot in full 4K is really cool. So your vacation footage is like amazing. And you know, you're shooting your 2 or 3 year old now, but in the wedding video, when they get married someday, you're going to want to come back to this 4K footage and you're going to be happy with what you find. One other thing I wanted to mention about these level cameras, you see they don't have the big handle on them with the microphone holder. They all have built-in microphones that are pretty decent as long as you're really close to what you're shooting. They're going to be really bad if you've got high ambient noise and then you're trying to get sound from somebody that's far away. That's not going to work. Now, Sony has a pro audio option for its still cameras and for these as well. And this is a really, really cool way to work. This is a pro, this whole section of this is literally like a pro video camera that's taken the little mixer off of. Everything is there that you need for this. It's really cool. So on the top of these cameras, all of them, I'm going to use the AX53 to show you, there's a little door that just opens up. And this door opens up like that, and on top there's a hot shoe. In the hot shoe, Sony has a proprietary thing called a multi-interface shoe, and the multi-interface shoe is designed for this bad boy. And I can slide this right into the hot shoe of the AX53, and now I have real audio that I can control manually using my fingers. Now this will close so you don't mess it up or anything like that. This is called the XLR-K3M. Now if you get one of these, make sure it's set to analog because these cameras are not able to do full digital recording, so you just have to put on analog and then off you go. But what's really nice is this will give you a really, really good sound from somebody that's not just right in front of you, but even 10, 15 feet away. You can get really good audio and hear what someone's saying even in a big room, for instance. So shotgun mics kind of listen in front, way in front of the camera, but they reject noise from the sides. And so this really is a really cool option. You know, wedding photographers need really good audio, for instance. And these type of cameras, these long form recording cameras, are in many respects much better than the mirrorless cameras because they're made for long form recording. If you go 2.5 hours, it's no big deal. The batteries, you know, you get extended batteries. As you can see, I'm using extended batteries in all my cameras because it just makes sense. The XLR-K3M is a really neat option, and it can take a camera like this one and make it have huge capabilities because I can now take the XLR-K3M off, put on the AX700, and that gives us a little segue to talk about it. So I'm going to set these others aside. Now, one thing I got to say right up front, when you go to the 1-inch sensor, you improve your video quality. You get that. You also lose the built-in gimbal. So now we don't have a gimbal, and now the camera has to do sort of electronic software image stabilization, which is not as good as this, frankly. But this camera is so awesome. So let me get into this a little bit. The AX700 has what's called a 1-inch stacked back illuminated RS sensor. Now, you don't know what that means. I don't know what that means either, quite frankly. But what it means is that this camera has capabilities in low light that these don't. So this gathers more light because it's a 1-inch sensor, but also the sensor itself is designed to capture really, really good imagery in low light. So you can get good high quality video even in low light. Now this is a big deal, again, if you're a wedding or event photographer. Sometimes you don't get to have the lights on all the way. People want to do candlelight ceremonies, all that kind of stuff. This is the way to go for that purpose, definitely. And one of the other things it has is built-in neutral density. So you can, in order to be able to take advantage of that 1-inch sensor, when you get outside in bright sunlight, you can literally have the neutral density off, or you can add, there's a 3-step, well really a 4-step ND, so 1/64th power, 1/64. It's just really cool. So you can actually still continue to shoot wide open, even on the side of a glacier at noon, and you can still have limited depth of field and have a little bit of blurry background, stuff like that. The other thing is that this camera is way superior at over these others is autofocus. The autofocus capability of the AX700 is phenomenal. If you're shooting NASCAR or luge or like tennis and you're shooting tight, this camera is going to keep up with the action in a way that these other smaller ones just cannot. Also, the background is going to be out of focus, whereas the background is going to be more in focus with these because of the smaller sensor. The other thing that's phenomenal about the AX700 is that, and I don't know why they did this, but they allowed the sort of big technology from the more pro video cameras from Sony into the AX700. Now, what do I mean by that? This camera can shoot what's called HLG, and it's really an HDR, high dynamic range. There's a setting in there you can put it on HDR kind of, and it will allow you to get more dynamic range in your video. So if you're shooting somebody in the shade of a tree and then behind is a brightly lit, full sun thing, and the background's really bright, you can actually make the video work. It'll still work because of the HLG. So the combination of the sensor and the technology that Sony has allows you to do a lot better work. It's really, really nice. And it allows you to do what's called instant workflow for HDR. Instead of having to shoot S-Log and then having to go into a pro video editor and then do all that, the camera can do all of it automatically, and it really, really works well. And it keeps you out of the edit bay for all day. So it'll keep you shooting more than you're editing, which is really handy. So I did mention S-Log. This camera does have S-Log, which is a huge deal. So if you are a pro and you're looking for just an option to have an AX700 as a wide shot maybe in the background, you can put it on 4K, you can do pans out of it or whatever in post. It's really, really a great camera for that. The other thing it has, which none of these cameras have, is the ability for an LANC connection. Now that sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, but on the side of the camera here, there's a little tiny little cap, a rubber door that opens. You just swing it over to the side, and I can plug this in. This is a sub-mini phone little plug, and now the camera can be on a tripod. And what I'm able to do is I'm able to you loosen this, and this goes on to the arm that's on the tripod that you use to pan with. And now I can literally zoom in and out without touching the camera. So I can stay and I can start and stop recording from the tripod. So it's a really nice way to work. It's like how pro video people work. And it gives you a lot of capability for wedding, church, and sort of event functions. Sometimes you need to be able to zoom in or zoom out and show a larger group, whatever. And doing that on the tripod and using the camera zoom is really inconvenient, and you'll end up making mistakes and it won't look good. So this LANC option is not available on the smaller cameras with the non 1-inch sensor, but it is possible on this. One of the things that I really like about the AX700 is it utilizes the menu system of the pro cameras. So the higher end cameras that we're going to talk about in the next video are going to have the same menu configurations with S-Log and all that kind of stuff that's in the AX700. So the AX700 is it's $1,898, but of course it doesn't come with the microphone, right? So you'd have to take this off. But when you get it like this, $1,898, it just has lots of capabilities. And in the past video, we talked about the CX405 and the CX455. They have no capabilities. You can't do anything like this or have the pro audio come in or any of that stuff. So this is a really fantastic camera option for many people. And if you start shooting with the AX700, and then a couple of years you buy like even a FX6 or an FX9, and you climb up into the full frame, cinema cameras, all the menus are going to be the same. You're going to understand how to work it really well, and you're going to have the neutral density, all that stuff. It's all going to be there. So this is kind of a mini pro package. Again, really good for POV work where you don't want to have something heavy and bolt on something to a car, motorcycle, or a roller coaster. This could really be a good option if the lens is wide enough. They do make aftermarket wide-angle lenses and telephoto lenses that'll screw right on the front of these. So you can look at your camera store and figure that out too. So I really love the AX700. It's definitely a part of my workflow. When I do 4 and 5 camera shoots, I use it all the time. Sorry, I spent a lot of time in this, but it is a much better camera than these, and it just has a lot more capabilities. But if you're not a pro, you may not need any of those. It may not matter to you. So thanks for watching, and on to the next video.